They loved you most when you doubted yourself, when you questioned your worth, when you softened your truth, when you bent to keep the peace. That's when they felt safe, not because you loved them, but because they could control the story. But the moment you woke up, the moment your voice stopped shaking, the moment you saw through their games, they didn't celebrate your growth. They punished it. Because your strength didn't flatter their ego. It threatened it. You didn't notice it at first. The shift was subtle. They used to smile when you spoke your mind. Now they sigh. They used to say, "You're amazing." Now it's, "You've changed." And maybe you have changed, but not in the way they claim. You started seeing patterns. You started noticing how your kindness was used as currency, how your empathy became their escape route, how your silence became their comfort zone. You stopped explaining your every move. You stopped apologizing for having boundaries. And that's when their tone shifted from admiration to accusation. They'll say things like, "You think you're better than me now. You've become cold. You used to be so easy to talk to." But what they really mean is, you've stopped being easy to control. Because when you start to recognize manipulation, you stop reacting the way manipulators expect you to. You stop feeding their insecurity. You stop justifying your emotions. You stop chasing their approval. And to someone who built their confidence on the power to control yours, that's terrifying. Here's the paradox. When you were confused, they called you sweet. When you started to understand, they called you difficult. When you cared too much, you were clingy. When you cared less, you were cold. No matter what you did, they found a way to twist it. Not because you were wrong, but because your awakening made them irrelevant. They can't manipulate awareness, so they'll try to damage it instead. They'll mock your tone, laugh when you speak your truth, roll their eyes when you express hurt, use sarcasm to make you second-guess your emotions. Because nothing terrifies a manipulator more than you trusting your own perception. They'll throw small insults, disguised as jokes. They'll say things like, "Wow, you're really sensitive lately. You always make things about you. You love drama, don't you?" Each phrase designed to do one thing: pull you back into self-doubt. And when that doesn't work, when you no longer flinch, when you don't rush to explain, they'll escalate. They'll rewrite the story. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're toxic. You're emotionally unstable. They'll tell others how you've changed, how they tried to help you, how you've become impossible. It's projection wrapped in performance. Because if they can't control the reality you see, they'll try to control the one others see about you. They start planting seeds. Quietly, strategically. Little comments slipped into conversations. "Oh, she's just been stressed. He's just in a weird phase. She's become so defensive lately." They'll make it sound like concern, but it's conditioning. They're softening the ground, so their narrative grows faster than the truth. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. They know perception is power, so they attack yours. And if you ever call it out, they'll laugh. "You're overthinking again. God, can't you take a joke? You're being dramatic." They'll gaslight you not to change your mind, but to make you doubt it. Because once you start trusting your own reality, they lose their script. You'll start feeling it. This strange distance forming in conversations. You'll feel them watching you differently, almost as if they're waiting for you to slip. And the truth is, they are. Because when they can't manipulate you emotionally, they'll try to control how others see you. They'll try to make you question your voice, your energy, your identity. They'll pick at little things: your tone, your expression, your timing, until you start second-guessing everything you say. That's the tactic. If they can't silence you externally, they'll try to silence you internally. But here's what they never prepare for. Once you wake up, you don't go back to sleep. Once you see how manipulation works, you can't unsee it. The next time they mock you, you'll hear the insecurity behind it. The next time they criticize you, you'll see the projection underneath it. The next time they try to guilt you, you'll recognize it as control, not care. Awareness becomes your immunity. And it's funny, the more you detach, the more obvious their tactics become. You'll notice how they only show kindness when you're compliant, how their affection depends on your submission, how their love is conditional, transactional, and tied to your silence. That's not love. That's control disguised as connection. And the moment you stop playing along, they start to fall apart. Because control only works when both people participate. They'll lash out. They'll act like you're heartless. They'll say you've changed. But the truth is, you just stop dancing to their rhythm. And when you stop feeding manipulation, you starve it. That's when they start to shrink. Not because you hurt them, but because they can no longer feed off you. You didn't destroy them. You just stopped being their mirror. And that is what breaks them the most. Not losing your love, but losing their control over your reflection. Because when you stop reacting, they have to face their own emptiness. And there's nothing more terrifying to someone who survives on power than the silence of someone they can no longer control. At first, they'll act like nothing's changed. They'll still text, still call, still throw casual words like, "Hey, stranger," or "Don't be a stranger." They'll act unbothered, untouched, like they're fine. But look closer. You'll feel the difference in their tone. The words are the same, but the control behind them is gone. And control was always their language. They don't know what to do with your calm. It's foreign to them. Your silence doesn't feed their ego anymore. It starves it. They'll try to provoke reactions. Subtle at first. They'll remind you of your past mistakes, poke at your soft spots, twist your boundaries into accusations. You're so distant now. You think you're perfect, huh? You're not as nice as you used to be. It's bait. Every line designed to pull you back into guilt. But guilt only works on people who haven't yet realized their worth. And you have. You'll notice how they shift strategies. When kindness stops working, they'll reach for criticism. When criticism fails, they'll try pity. When pity doesn't move you, they'll go silent, hoping you'll panic in the quiet. But you won't, because you've learned to make peace with silence. You've learned that your worth isn't dependent on their attention. And that's the moment the balance flips. They used to pull strings, and you'd move. Now they pull, and nothing happens. That terrifies them, because control only works when the other person still cares about their opinion. You stop defending yourself, stopped justifying your emotions, stopped arguing over twisted meanings. You stop playing their game, and that's when they start losing. They'll notice the glow in your quiet. They'll sense something in your energy, that lightness that used to be dimmed by over-explaining. They'll see it in your tone, in your posture, in the way you no longer need them to validate what you already know. That's when the real unraveling begins. They might start competing with you, trying to one-up your peace with fake confidence, posting quotes about moving on, acting like they've leveled up. But deep down, they're not trying to move on. They're trying to prove you wrong. They want to believe that your strength was temporary, that your calm was an act, that sooner or later, you'll come crawling back, apologizing for setting boundaries. But you don't. You don't chase. You don't explain. You don't break the silence. And that silence begins to speak louder than anything they've ever said. Because silence is honest. It doesn't perform. It doesn't defend. It just reveals. It shows them what they tried to deny, that you never needed their permission to be strong. And when they finally realize that, it hits them where they live, in their ego. Their mind will replay old arguments, old moments when they thought they won, and they'll start to see it differently now. They'll see how much of your love was patience disguised as forgiveness, how much of your silence was exhaustion disguised as peace, how much of your softness was strength they never deserved. That realization will sting, not because you punished them, but because they finally see how much they lost trying to control someone who only wanted connection. But the truth is, they never wanted connection. They wanted submission. And when you stopped giving them that, they didn't know how to love you anymore. They'll tell people you changed. But what really changed was the way you responded to manipulation. You stopped being predictable. You stopped bending. You stopped shrinking to fit their comfort zone. And that's when they started calling you difficult. They'll miss the version of you who apologized for things you didn't do, who explained yourself for things they didn't deserve to understand, who stayed up late trying to decode their moods. But they won't miss you. They'll miss their power over you. There's a difference. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. Soon, they'll feel that power slipping through their fingers. They'll try to reassert control, not by being kind, but by being confusing. One moment, they'll reach out warmly. The next, they'll withdraw coldly. They want to destabilize your peace, because chaos was where they used to thrive, and where they kept you dependent. But you don't play in chaos anymore. You live in calm, and calm is something manipulators can't survive in. That's what breaks them, not your anger, not your distance, but your peace. Your refusal to play the game becomes the end of their illusion, because manipulation is theater, and you just stop giving them an audience. You'll start to notice something else too. The people who once believed their stories will begin to see the truth without you saying a word. They'll notice how different you seem now, how grounded, how consistent, how your energy doesn't match the chaos they described. Because truth, like silence, doesn't need defending. It just needs time. And time always exposes the ones who manipulate. They'll sense it happening. Their charm won't land the same. Their words won't hold the same weight. People will start seeing the cracks they used to hide behind you. And that realization that they've lost control not just over you, but over the narrative, will break them in ways you'll never witness. Because you'll be too busy living your peace to notice their downfall. It won't be dramatic. It'll be quiet, a slow unraveling behind the scenes. Their attempts to diminish you will start diminishing them. That's the irony of manipulation. It always collapses under its own weight. They built their worth on control, and when control slips away, they have nothing left to stand on. You, on the other hand, you rise differently now. You don't need to prove your strength. It shows in the way you stay unbothered, in the way you respond, with calm instead of chaos, in the way your silence carries dignity, not defeat. That's what real power looks like. And as they start to fade, you'll realize something profound. You didn't have to fight them. You just had to stop engaging. You didn't have to block them. You just had to stop reacting. You didn't have to expose them. They exposed themselves the moment you stopped playing their game. And that's when you understand. Your strength was never the problem. It was the truth they couldn't handle. Because when manipulation fails, control dies. And when control dies, their illusion of power goes with it. They'll say they've moved on. They'll say it with a tone that sounds practiced, rehearsed. But when they're alone, that's when the silence starts to echo. The silence you left behind. The silence they once mistook for weakness. Now it sounds like truth. Because silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's the presence of consequence. And your absence becomes the one thing they can't manipulate. They can't gaslight what's not responding. They can't twist what's not engaging. They can't win a game. When the other player has left the field, you'll start to feel it, the shift in energy. At first, you thought they didn't care, that maybe they really were fine. But time has a way of revealing what people try to bury. They'll start showing up in strange ways. A story view, a mistaken like, a friend mentioning your name in conversation, and they pretend not to react. But inside, something tightens. Because control was their currency. And now, they can't afford you anymore. They'll think about you. When the world goes quiet, they'll remember how you used to soften their rough edges just by being kind. How your empathy used to make them feel powerful. But now, it makes them feel small. Because they know they drained that kindness dry. You gave, and they took. You healed, and they hid. You reached out, and they withdrew. And now they finally see what they were destroying while they were trying to dominate it. They'll tell themselves, you're the one who changed, that you became cold, distant, detached. But late at night, when that mask of arrogance slips, they'll remember how it really happened. They'll remember the first time you went quiet. Instead of explaining, the first time you smiled. Instead of defending yourself, the first time you said nothing. When they tried to provoke a reaction, that's the moment they lost access to your soul. And they know it. Because you can't manipulate someone who no longer seeks your approval. And you can't diminish someone who has already seen the truth. You'll start to see them pop up in subtle ways, trying to remind you they still exist. Maybe a random message. Hey, just checking in. Or something cryptic like, hope you're doing okay. But you'll feel it. The emptiness in their words. The way it doesn't land anymore. Because you're not that person anymore. You don't crave their closure. You don't need their reassurance. You've already built peace where their chaos used to live. And that peace is magnetic. They'll feel it too. They'll feel how your energy shifted. You're not chasing, not proving, not explaining. You've outgrown the game they live by. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than losing emotional access to someone they once controlled. That's not just loss. That's exposure. Because they can't hide from the truth anymore. That without control, they don't know how to connect. You'll notice something strange happen next. They'll start mirroring your calm, trying to sound peaceful, trying to appear above it, talking about boundaries and self-love, as if they invented them. But it won't feel authentic, because it's not. It's imitation, not evolution. They're trying to become what you are, just to regain your attention. But the energy doesn't lie. You'll sense the performance instantly. And that's what destroys them quietly. The realization that they can copy your words, but not your peace. Because peace isn't an act. It's earned. It's built from nights of overthinking, from boundaries that hurt to hold, from lessons that left scars. You didn't wake up strong. You grew through the things that tried to break you. And they were one of them. They'll start to wonder how they lost control so fast. How the same person who once apologized for things they didn't do now walks away without a word. They'll replay it in their mind, trying to spot the moment the shift happened. But the truth is, it wasn't sudden. It was slow. It was steady. It was every time you caught yourself, shrinking a little to keep the peace. Until one day, you decided peace shouldn't cost your self-respect. And from that moment on, they never had a chance. They'll test your silence. They'll throw small hooks, reminders of old memories, inside jokes, remember when texts. But the moment you don't bite, you'll see the frustration behind their charm. Because your lack of response forces them to sit with something they've avoided their whole life. Accountability. They'll try to rebuild the illusion. Act cool, collected, unaffected. They'll even convince others that you were the problem. But energy tells the truth that words can't disguise. People will start to feel it. that heaviness that follows them, the inconsistency in their stories. And slowly, the mask they wear for others will start to crack from the inside. That's when the projection begins. They'll say you think you're better. They'll say you're cold or heartless. But what they really mean is, you stop being available for their control. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You have, but they'll never admit that they were the reason you had to. They'll romanticize you in their mind, convince themselves you were the one that got away, but not because they loved you, because they couldn't own you. You became the one thing they couldn't rewrite, the one person who saw behind the charm and walked away anyway. And that will always haunt them, because no matter how many people they meet after you, they'll keep searching for the same kind of softness you gave, without the strength that terrifies them. But they'll never find it, because it doesn't exist in halves. It only existed in you. They'll think about reaching out, and sometimes they'll do it, but it won't be to heal. It'll be to test, to see if they still matter, if they can still get a reaction, if their words can still bend your calm. But when your response is short, warm, and detached, that's when it hits them. They don't have access anymore. Not to your emotions, not to your mind, not to your energy. That's the quiet revenge. You didn't have to expose them. You just had to outgrow them. Because real power doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't prove. It just is. And that's what you've become. The calm they can't shake. The closure they'll never get. The mirror that reflects everything they refuse to face. They'll move on physically, but not emotionally. Because what broke them wasn't losing you. It was realizing you didn't lose yourself, trying to keep them. And that difference will echo in their chest for a long, long time. You'll know they've broken when they start pretending harder than ever. They'll post quotes about self-love. They'll show off how unbothered they are. They'll talk about healing as if they didn't leave destruction behind them. But healing doesn't sound that loud. It doesn't need an audience. Their noise is just the echo of what they can't silence. The guilt, the loss, the truth. You'll notice the contradiction. They act fine, but their eyes tell a different story. That flicker when your name comes up, that forced smile, when someone mentions your glow, that pause in their voice when they say, "I'm happy for them." It's not jealousy, it's realization. They're realizing that you were never the one who was weak. You were the one who stayed kind. In a world that tried to harden you, you were the one who kept showing up, even when they made you doubt yourself. And that kind of strength, they'll never be able to fake. See, manipulators survive on illusion. They convince themselves that as long as they look in control, they are. But illusion can't outlast authenticity. And your peace is real. That's why it haunts them. They'll scroll through your photos, not to admire, but to understand how you look lighter, how your smile looks effortless again, how you seem freer now than you ever did with them. It'll confuse them, because in their mind, they were the reason you glowed. They'll never admit that your glow came back the moment they left. They'll go through phases, denial first, then anger, then silence. But the silence won't heal them, because theirs isn't peace. It's punishment. They'll try to replace you, not to move on, but to prove to themselves that they still matter. They'll search for someone who feels like you, but is easier to control. They'll fail, because what they miss isn't your attention. It's the way your soul made them feel safe, even when they didn't deserve it. And when that realization finally hits, it won't be loud. It won't come with tears or apologies. It'll come in quiet moments, when they're driving home, or scrolling at 2 a.m., or looking at someone new, and feeling nothing. Because no matter what they do now, there's an emptiness they can't fill. not because they lost you, but because they lost the version of themselves they only ever found through you. You'll notice they stop reaching out, not because they've healed, but because they've realized there's nothing left to take. Their tests don't work anymore. Their words don't land. Their games don't stir emotion. They've run out of ways to control you. And when manipulation no longer works, all that's left is the mirror that shows them who they really are and who they could have been if they didn't try to break the hand that loved them. That's the part they'll never say out loud. They'll never admit that losing you wasn't just losing a person, it was losing access to a love that never had to be earned through control. They'll tell themselves stories to survive it, that you were difficult, that you were dramatic, that you were the problem. But deep down, in the quietest corners of their heart, they'll know the truth. You were the peace they mistook for boredom, the stability they called predictable, the love they confused for weakness. And now, they're living with the aftermath. You, on the other hand, you've grown softer again, but not naive, open, but not exposed, kind, but not blind. You've learned that protecting your peace isn't coldness, it's clarity. You've learned that detachment isn't indifference, it's maturity. And you've learned that walking away doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you finally started caring about yourself too. So if you're watching this right now and you feel like you're being punished for setting boundaries, remember this. You're not hard to love. You're just hard to manipulate. And that's a compliment. The right person won't need to confuse you to feel secure. They won't use your empathy as leverage. They won't need to test your loyalty to believe in it. They'll meet your peace with peace, your calm with presence, your love with safety. That's what's waiting for you on the other side of letting go. Because healing isn't about proving a point, it's about breaking a pattern. And you've done that. You've broken free from the illusion that love means losing yourself. You've proven that silence can be strength, and that peace isn't passive, it's powerful. So, no, you don't need to block them out of anger. You don't need to beg them for clarity. You just need to live your truth loudly enough that their version of you no longer fits. And when that happens, you'll see the final shift. They won't be your story anymore. They'll just be the lesson that taught you what real connection feels like. Because in the end, they didn't destroy you. They revealed you. They showed you the strength that blooms in silence, the freedom that comes from detachment, and the peace that arrives when you finally stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. And that's how you win. Not through revenge, not through words, but through peace so steady it makes chaos crumble on its own. So if this message hit you, don't scroll away in silence. Let it remind you that you're not crazy. You're healing. You're evolving. You're becoming the person they never thought you could be without them. Drop "peace wins" in the comments if you're done explaining yourself to people who never really listened. Because from this moment on, your silence is your power, and your peace is the loudest thing about you.